America is kind of ugly. Every building is either brown, white, tan, beige, or maybe throw in a red here and there. It all looks muggy, unkept, and devoid of character. Where's the pizzazz? And I'm sorry to call you out if these pictures happen to be your city, but you probably already know. And if you don't, then come on, bestie, where are we? Most of the reason why our urban planning is so shit is because it's cost effective. Real estate moguls want to make money off of housing people, so they cut corners. They use cheap materials, they don't pay extra for unique designs, and they don't build too tall because of land and air permits and all that nonsense. Granted, that's not entirely fair, as there are a few other contributing factors. Number one actually being that old fire and safety codes from the 1930s say that 3-story apartment buildings must have 2 staircases. This video goes into more details, but it basically makes apartments shorter and wider. Another factor is cars. As this video pointed out, parking spaces confine the amount of space that architects have to work with when designing new apartments. These are all reasons why American apartments look like this, and Iranian apartments look like this. Well, so what if our houses look like shit? We live inside them, not outside. This is true, but architecture is an art form because it makes us feel things. If you've ever been to a prettier city, or most outside the US, then you might have noticed how awestruck you were at the buildings. Maybe you remember gazing up at the colorful and unique nature of the apartments, or the classical-inspired intricate carvings of city buildings. In America, we don't put emphasis on looks, we put emphasis on practicality, which on paper sounds great, but in practice, it makes us feel dreadful. Let's talk about cars, because we have a massive car culture in America. Most towns and even cities don't have trams, trains, buses, or bike lanes. Things are also incredibly spread out, turning a quick 5-minute drive into a 40-minute walk. As a result, Americans get themselves a car and learn to drive. You can see this car culture reflected in our infrastructure. Great examples of this are Stroads. Stroads are long stretches of road that resemble highways. They have businesses on the side, complicated intersections that can cause accidents, and again, little to no walkable or bikeable paths for people. They are strictly for vehicular access. Of course, sometimes they can have sidewalks or bike lanes, but those are not disconnected from the streets enough to be safe. This video goes into much more detail about them and is a great watch. It describes a road as a place for cars to get from one place to another, and a street a place for people and for businesses, where shops are close to the street, people can freely walk and interact, and there's a freaking bench or two. But a combination of the two concepts is called a stroad, and America is full of them. In most towns and cities, you'll find stroads with massive complexes with like 5 stores, sprawling parking lots the size of multiple city blocks, gas stations, fast food restaurants, and so much empty space, and barren of any life. From an architectural standpoint, it's clear that these designs are not meant to evoke feeling in people or to look good, because let's be real, they're fucking ugly. Instead of drawing from inspiration from classical architecture that draws on nature, feels inviting and even natural to us, we simply tend to the demands of the population, our consumerist tendencies, and to accommodate all the damn cars that we drive. Of course, this should make sense. Cars are great for business. They transport people across vast distances, give people freedom to go wherever they want, and they provide a great avenue for advertising. Since thousands of people will take the freeway today, why not throw up a massive billboard that they'll all see? Why not put radios in cars and have people listen to your advertising? Why not blast ads in people's ears while they fill up their gas tanks or charge their EVs? So what does this car culture do to us? Well, for me personally, it disorients me. I've grown up with this kind of barren corporate aesthetic that we have. Walking down the street to go to the store is like scaling a mountain in Minecraft with 3 hearts. That sounds dramatic, but like, hear me out. There are few crosswalks, rarely pedestrian walking signals, and everything is made up of metal and asphalt. It's so scary, and I'm just a pebble. The aesthetic is also bland and devoid of soul, as mentioned, which makes you feel dead inside. Or it feels like I'm in The Walking Dead for some reason. Like, I don't know, shit's crazy out there. I've also grown up in places with no sidewalks at all, where cars just whiz by me a few feet away. Every time I hear the whirring of a car behind me, I get incredibly anxious. It's very annoying, and I know I'm not the only one. Studies have shown that people who live near highways are more anxious on average. It's because of the noise. It is also well known that LA highways run through poorer neighborhoods, and they have these adverse health effects. Also, they specifically tore down black neighborhoods to make it, something that 1950s America was very fond of doing. Cars are also very hostile to people. I mean, just look at this shit. Would you feel safe walking around in this? Of course, it doesn't help that American cars are freaking massive, and people are more likely to get hit. Not to mention, the carbon emissions from these things are enough to make my lungs hurt. About 40,000 people die each year in car accidents, all because that's how we choose to live. In my opinion, it is too much responsibility for 300 million Americans to simply be told to drive safely. There have to be more intuitive and safer road systems being implemented. I'll get to that later though, because this video isn't solely about cars, it's about American infrastructure, and the housing situation is crazy. I've already mentioned how apartments are limited by car space, but I didn't mention single-family homes, and baby, You haven't seen anything yet. Starting in the 1950s, America decided to expand its settlements outside of the smelly cities and into suburbia. People who worked good jobs could buy themselves homes anywhere from 5 to 60 minutes outside of a major city. There they could have their own house with 2 yards, white picket fences, driveways, and they could do whatever they wanted with their interior. Instead of finding a common place among the townsfolk to hang out, the spots to hang became people's houses or their backyards. Something to note about the suburbs is that they're not close to anything. Again, you're looking at a 5 to 60 minute drive away from big or small cities. They're usually only the in-between towns that are filled with the Stroads and the ugly, uninviting shit that you just drive by and only go to out of necessity. Because of this separation, suburbia is often very lonely. Having lived in a few suburban neighborhoods myself, yeah, it is pretty lonely. Most people just don't go out much, but those that do only go in their cars all by themselves, adding to the isolation. Oh, and as I mentioned before, there aren't going to be sidewalks in suburbia. Like, in a lot of places there are, but homeowners have to pay for them, so plenty of people don't. You'll be stuck walking in the middle of the road just a few feet from the cars. Also, just look at it. Doesn't it feel like a liminal space? Let's talk about it? Having these cookie-cutter, cheaply and quickly made properties all lined up in grids just feels so dystopian. Zoning laws make it so you can only build single-family homes on these lots, so that's what we do. Everyone has their own barely unique plot, everyone stays in their homes, only interacting with people they see on the street, and for kids trying to play, they have to make way for the stupid cars that pass by. As a kid, that used to annoy the shit out of me. I'd be playing street hockey by myself in my driveway, all dressed up in gear and shit, and people would just drive by and stare at me and smile. Ew. Jokes aside, I get the appeal of suburbia. Maybe add in a few trees anyway? But it's not sustainable. We cannot keep living in a world where millions of people are in separate boxes like this. There's not enough space and there's not enough money. It's a massive reason for the American and Canadian housing crises. Suburbia is taking up too much space for such few people living there. And go figure, homeowners don't want to sell their homes yet. The government doesn't want to change zoning laws or regulations, and Americans, well, they don't really care. It is this lack of care that makes it so living in America is not as socially engaging as it could be or it used to be. You feel dead inside. Everyone is trying to sell you something, and the people on the road don't know how to fucking drive. Oh my God, who taught you? Almost everything in America is corporately dominated. Still thinking about those ugly corporate buildings from before, each with their fucking massive signs displaying a colorful lit-up logo, signaling drivers to stop in and buy something. It's just icky. Corporate culture goes deeper than the infrastructure, but this video would be 10 hours long if I got into that. Which, if y'all want that, I will literally make a 10-hour video about American corporate culture and consumerism, cause it's bad. But goodness, so much anxiety, distress, boredom, numbness, and frustration could be avoided if we just made shit for people and not for transformers. I love you guys, but please. I should mention that many cities, urban planners, and activists recognize this and are actively fighting to solve these problems. Seattle, for example, allows for 6-story buildings to have only 1 staircase, allowing for a taller building that can house more people. Many cities are installing bike lanes, making pedestrian-only streets, constructing roundabouts, and trying to make cool architecture or whatever. So not all hope is lost. However, we Americans should do more to help our society and improve our lives in our homes. We should stop bending the knee to our corporate overlords. And by we, I mean we. The change starts with us, as this video aptly points out. We have to go to city council meetings and fight NIMBYs. We have to inform others about these changes and their benefits. I'll be honest, I'm in a similar boat to a lot of y'all where I don't know how to properly make a difference. I want to learn, and I hope that you do too. We can learn together. And this isn't radical, by the way. I just want to live. There's nothing radical about living. So I couldn't find a place to put this in the video, so this will kind of be like an epilogue, but if you're turned off by this video of me shitting on America, that's fine. This is my opinion. Granted, it's an informed opinion, but an opinion nonetheless. I will give some context here about cities and how they form, because cities form around the people that inhabit them. So if people like to drive cars, then they'll be busting out their Toyotas. It's just how it works. Other cities have existed since the colonial era, have been through massive changes, and they have to build around what is already there in a chaotic, unplanned way. I do fuck with that, not gonna lie. And other cities have dogfights that end with them scaling back non-car infrastructure or adding more. Every city is different, unique, and has its own reasons why things are. This video is not to be a blanket statement saying that all of the histories of these cities are invalid. I am more trying to raise awareness about my opinions that I've had since I was little. Okay, that's all. Bye!